Hey everybody, Seth Campbell here with the new Segue Says podcast. Well, we've passed the big milestone of 50 and now we venture forth into the next batch, so let's see what we got. This week we're going to feature two more modern songs. The first is Viva, Vida, the ever-present Coldplay song, and the second is a song that a lot of people know but not necessarily by the name, Shady, Esperanto, and the Young Hearts. Odds are I've had to abbreviate that for the video title down below, but that's the full title, and it's by a band called Kellogg and the Sixers. And a lot of people I've spoken to know it as the "Oh, I Never Want to Get Old" song, which is based on the chorus, which you'll hear shortly. But let's start with Viva Vida, which oddly enough is another song that a lot of people understandably don't recognize by title. Some people think of it as the "When I Ruled the World" song because it never actually says Viva la Vida, and variations on "Used to Rule the World," "When I Ruled the World," etc. are very common. And it has the same chord progression through most of it. Both songs are in the key of G sharp major, though you might not immediately suspect that with the Coldplay tune because the first chord is a C sharp sus2 followed by a D sharp 7 with a sus4. It's basically you mainly keep this voicing in the right hand. Then there's the G sharp major, but it's over the third, so it's over the C, F minor. And this basically loops. Of course, the actual version sounds a little something more like this. Because it's very string heavy, but since the other song is not, I'm not going to use the string patch. This song is, because of the orchestration, this song gets around what my usual complaint with a Coldplay song is. I like a lot of Coldplay songs, but the trouble is, in my opinion, they tend to start somewhere and just kind of stay. They don't really build, they don't ebb and flow like a lot of songs do. Viva la Vida most definitely does. It builds up big time, and I give him a lot of credit for doing that. So, first chorus, standard deal, as if you don't know this one note for note, whether you want to or not already. I used to rule the world, seas would rise when I gave the word. Now in the morning I sleep alone, sweep the streets I used to own. I used to roll the dice, see the fear in my enemy's eyes, and listen as a crowd would sing, "Your king is dead, long live the king." 1 minute I held the key, next the walls would close on me, and I discovered that my castle stand upon pillars of salt, pillars of sand. I hear Jerusalem bells ringing, the Roman cavalry choir singing, "Be my banner, my sword and shield, my missionaries in a foreign field." For some reason I can't explain, I know St. Peter will call my name. Never an honest word, that was when I ruled the world. I actually sang the chorus that comes the second time around because more people recognize that than the first one, just for the sake of clarity. But that is essentially the loop progression of Viva la Vida. There is a bridge, but essentially it goes through that. And so it's in G sharp, but it never really settles on that. You could argue it's in F minor because that's the chord it's always, which is the relative minor, incidentally, but it's where the phrases always end. However, it definitely feels like this chord in the progression is the resolution, and that's because you've got the 5-1, a dominant progression. So that really sets up a cadence. Although it's not technically a cadence because it's not the end of the phrase. I'm getting really technical here, so if you're not getting this, don't worry about it. It's not really crucial. Essentially, all you need to know is that third chord. That's the key. Now, Shady, Esperanto, and the Young Hearts is also in this key. And here's a verse chorus to that.
Lilac has released me from the sting of the queen bee. Help me to forget about the lions chasing me. If a man among us has a notion that he's free, I entreat you to the challenge, stand on up and let's see you get I never wanna get old.
And then it goes to the next verse. Excuse my voice, I'm kind of burned out today. I sang like man at the piano bar last night and then a couple days before that, so I'm a little hoarse today. But you get the essence, and if you've heard the song, you know how it goes. So these are the two songs, as you can see, similar tempo, so you don't really need to worry about any big stop and start type of thing. Essentially, you just have to morph from one into the other. Now, the reason that could be considered a little tricky is, as I mentioned, this home chord, the root, is never at the end of the phrase in Viva la Vida. So you're going to have to do an incomplete phrase to a certain degree. Now, to do that, of course, at the end of Viva la Vida, there's one last, there's when I rule the world, and then there's a choir of voices that basically sing the chords a couple times. Now, when you're playing that on solo piano, obviously, you know, unless you have a choir, you can't replicate all the notes, so basically you just play the chords. And I like to do a little bit of a delicate jam, because it's just come from this huge, big final chorus.
That was when I ruled the world.
It's a big breakdown, so I like to just really delicately continue the progression. And what I like to do when you do a breakdown and you go way up in the high range of the piano is you slowly bring everything back down toward the left side of the piano where you're using the lower keys. And essentially what you do is you just, rather than go to that fourth chord the last time when you're ready to switch, you just stop right on the third like this. You start the double time rhythm in the left hand to make clear that you're keeping this pace, you're not stopping even though you're resting on a chord. You start the bass line.
Lilac has released me from the sting of the queen bee. Help me to forget about the lions chasing me,
etc. And there you go. And because the home key is kind of hidden a little bit in Viva la Vida, you don't really want to transition back. Besides, Shady Esperanto has a really cool ending on its own.
You try and you try, you try and you try, you try and you try again, but you can't try enough.
So why would you want to spoil that ending? You wouldn't. However, Viva la Vida, as I said, the way it ends on the record is the choir and, you know, way in the back quietly singing the chords. So when I started playing it solo, it was a little unsure how exactly to end it. And I was doing this thing for a little bit. Feel free to steal this, anybody out there, because it's pretty cool, but
it's not exactly segue. I mean, you end on this F minor as the fourth chord. The fourth chord in the progression, it's not the fourth of the scale, just to clarify. But I did this thing where rather than making, this is the 4 chord in the scale, followed by the 5, followed by the 1, and then the minor 6th. But what I did, it was the same thing where you end the phrase on the 3rd chord to make an ending. But rather than go to the 1, I went to the 6 major, which changes the function of these chords from 4 and 5 to flat 6, flat 7, 1, which is kind of funky. This is what that would sound like in context. Probably want to slow it down a little. So that one really comes out of nowhere, and it's a cool ending. And in theory, you could segue into any song that's in F major there, or a song that starts with F major. But I did that the first few gigs where I played this song, and I liked it. It was cool, but I always felt like, you know, Viva la Vida, like I said, it's a big build-up. You've got so much going at the end of the song. Even with the breakdown, there's still this leftover energy. And so I wanted to do something with that, and I figured, okay, you know, why not let it carry over to another song? So I started examining the songs I knew, and I came up with a few that might work, all in this key of G sharp major. And I tried them out. I tried... Well, actually, I don't want to tell you because it's going to spoil another segue that involves Shady, Esperanto, and the Young Hearts that will appear sometime down the line in this podcast. But suffice it to say that after a number of attempts, Shady, Esperanto, and the Young Hearts really just seem to fit. They had the same tempo. It's much happier lyrically than Viva la Vida. It's youthful exuberance and overconfidence, where Viva la Vida is sort of a fall from grace lament. But they really seem to fit together. The energy seemed to transfer and to translate well. So that's why I've done that. And oddly enough, I don't think I've performed either of these songs without the other one since I came up with this. It's been, I want to say 4 months? 4 months. And that... it's just worked, you know, and that's sometimes the best thing you can say about a segue is, hey, it works, why not? So thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed this, and welcome to the journey of the next 50 Segue Says episodes. See you next week.